Hey everybody, this is Perch. How are you doing? You doing all right? I'm curious. I hope you're doing all right. I'm too busy lately. That's how I am. But hey, it's Friday when I'm recording this. Who knows when it goes out? I should really align the days. It's funny. I do recognize the fact that if I just put in like 5% more effort, the show would probably be much better. And I know, going from 0% of quality to 5% is not saying much, but still, just a little bit more effort. That would be better. I have a couple emails that are kind of on my mind, and they're not ones I read here, but kind of correspondence with friends, one inside the industry, one outside the industry, but trying to create their own industry. And First off, the first note that I got was like, "Hey, you sound annoyed lately," and it goes in cycles. I think something kind of harps on my mind. Usually, the generator is a feeling on my part that people are being mistreated in comics, and why it irks me. Why I move from kind of irritated to angry is I think I explained this in another video. It's that the comic community takes so much pains, so much effort in calling itself a family. We support each other, we help each other out, we're always there, and yet time after time after time, there are legends or creators who are ignored until they passed on. Or people have to go and do GoFundmes for plumbing problems or what have you in their house, and it becomes this like, hey, if that support was real, if the family was real, we'd be helping people from getting into this state. We wouldn't be forgetting people and leaving them behind. So I hate that hypocrisy, and it plays on my mind. I hear somebody is fallen on hard times, or some injustice is going on. The statement that I got, San Diego Comic Con coming up, and the statement I heard, they haven't validated it. The statement I heard was that Walt Simonson was told that if he wants to attend, he needs to enter the hotel lottery like everybody else, and they're not going to pay his way, and kind of good luck. And I hear that and I get this burning, angry feeling in my chest. And it's nothing. Obviously, I'm a fanboy for Walt Simonson, no doubt about it. I wear that with pride. But really, I mean, again, on every level, I struggle with that. Here's somebody who's contributed a lot to comics. If that's true, what a douche move. And then from the sheer standpoint of bringing attention and value to the convention, you put Walt Simonson on a panel or a table and, just to sign autographs, get some attention, and he's going to people are going to line up to see that. Simonson is a big draw. Granted, a lot of newer comic readers haven't had exposure to him, but the people who go to San Diego Comic Con are absolutely people who know Walt Simonson. So what are you doing? Like, that would be a guest you would struggle to have there, and so it makes me crazy. But I do get irritated, and I guess I always feel like if you're angry, I know this is a cliche statement, but if you're angry and you're irritated, then you've given up control of yourself, and so it's better to keep a level head. That's what you normally hear in these videos. It's keeping a level head. And it just gives you more ability to be perspective. By the way, I got the nastiest mail. So one of the videos I recently posted was this Disney store mail, and at the very beginning of the video, and I remember thinking this when I was publishing this, I mentioned that there was a tweet years ago, like at least a year and a half, 2 years, I don't remember. It was a while ago, and I posted talking about how the Disney Marvel store didn't have comics, and I said, Eric July, who is recently back in the spotlight. Well, I don't say he's been in the spotlight, but he's for a new reason in a new spotlight due to the Rippaverse and the money he's raised and everything else. Very successful, and he should be very proud of that. But I mentioned that he took the tweet and then retweeted it kind of out of context, and not exactly dunking on me, but sort of like, look at this dumbass, doesn't know anything about comics, kind of along those lines. And I mentioned that I got all these people who are like, oh, you better, tuck your tail between. I had somebody like, you should just close your account for a while because, he's got a lot of followers and he'll go after you. I remember thinking, what a bunch of pussies. That's, I'm not gonna. I'm not the personality that's gonna go in there and mix it up with him. But that's a dumb reaction. Like, all people everywhere are allowed to get it wrong, and they do, and he did in this case. That doesn't mean he's a bad person. Doesn't mean I'm starting a civil war on Twitter with him. It just means he didn't understand. But anyway, I mentioned this in this video, and I got to, again, it was kind of reaffirming the whole thing. I got the nastiest mail of like, how dare you? He's accomplished more in your life than you've ever accomplished, and you delete your account. You must apologize. Just like this screeching list of demands, and it's like the only thing I can think of when I'm reading this is these are the people like this are the same ones that complain about comic industry pros doing night letters and demanding subservience. And that's a horrible problem. But, it turns out they're the exact same person. The people who would sit down and write a goofy ass mail like that. I don't know. People take things too seriously. I'll reference, I'm told I shouldn't do this either, but I like, what do I care about anything? There was a point that Zach made during was that somebody forwarded me. It's like, this sounds like something you would appreciate, and they were right. This little clip was, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was along the lines of, imagine how weird it would be if, a requirement was that you had to be liked to shop in a store. Like you go into a grocery store and, you demand that the cashier like you, right? Like you're buying your fruit and you're like, do you like me? And then you want the cashier to have a relationship with you at that level. It was a good point. I think there's more to that point, meaning that expand upon that, because that's an interesting place the world is in right now, where there's reasonable expectations and unreasonable expectations. But anyway, the other note that's kind of spinning around in my head right now, and this is as it relates to Oni and some of the other things that are going on in the industry. Um, I think the challenge that we have at the moment is that for the last 5 years, there's been a lot of the end is coming, doom is here kind of narrative around comics. Marvel and DC are dying, or are already dead, or they're going to be, and people get ahead of themselves. There's Cosmic Book News ran a bunch of articles in like 2018. Marvel Comics about to be shuttered, closed, and end. It's like, you know, I think that the challenge is if you run a story saying, "Hey, Marvel Comics is having some problems. They're not getting, their titles aren't selling. They're struggling to kind of consistently achieve over 100,000 copy." It says, then that's defensible. Because there's proof. You can back that up and say, yeah, wherever you think the industry is going, there's plenty of hard evidence that supports that statement. But when you take it farther, you're like, okay, no, but that's not enough. That's not a juicy enough headline. So we want to put in there that the entire business is going to collapse and be shuttered in 2 months. One, that's impossible. But that's kind of where a lot of the commentary about the business has gone. And the challenge with that is there are legitimate, real problems in comics, big problems. And I think the only situation, and the problem is that there's a bit of a domino effect, which is that comic book companies needed money in order to fund and survive. In the background, inflation is going on, cost of goods is going on. The industry started reaching out to non-U.S. workers for creative talent because it would be cheaper, but that created a different form of logistical kind of things to work around. And the money that was coming in was built not on the core business. And this is a really important point that like two of you will care about, but it's really important, is that the money coming into comics was not being applied for the success of comics. It was being applied under the premise that the comics could get made cheaper and it could then be translated into movie and Hollywood properties that would make more money. But the important factor there is the promise of money, the promise of investment was based around not the business that the money was being obtained for. It was being based on a consequence of that business, meaning give me money, I'm going to make a comic, and because I made that comic, I'm going to go get a Hollywood deal, and then I'm going to make you more money. Now, typically speaking, investment firms, private equity, and other things don't like that kind of two-stage business. They like it more direct. any complexity typically, generates problems. But because the streaming wars were happening, because people were seeing that media was transforming and everything else, a lot of investors went along with it because it fit a portfolio strategy of wanting to have new media in your investments. So I'm sorry, I know that's again boring for all but two of you. So if you're one of those two, please in the comments give me a little shout that you care about that. But then I can't stress enough how important of a point that is, because now we're living in a place where the streaming new media investment has cooled, and we're seeing, in addition to that, as I said, quietly in the background, inflation has gone up, cost of goods have gone up, labor has moved to other countries, which has been an issue, and so you've seen this pivot in all the negative directions, while simultaneously the core business of comics has failed to basically do the core things it needed to do: get additional distribution, get mainstream popularity, and in order to keep the story going. And there were two groups that were highly motivated to keep if you will, this particular strategy moving. Group number one were people that have figured out a way to profit off of this system and just didn't want their world to change. When I say profit, I don't mean massively profit. I'm talking like people like Heidi McDonald over at the Beat. Heidi's not any kind of millionaire doing great, but Heidi likes her life, likes the position she's in, likes this unique spot. And so therefore, it's in Heidi's best interest to keep this current world going. If the world changes too much, then she's got to find a new place to be. She has to adapt, and it's hard to adapt later in your career when you're older, and when you've wired yourself to a certain paradigm. If the paradigm shifts, then that's dangerous for you. So a lot of people cling on to that, and you see that with a lot of the executive teams at Marvel, at DC, a lot of leadership. They're desperate to just keep things the way they are because that's what they know, and they've if not wildly profitable and successful, they're at least hanging in there. They've acclimated to a life they're okay with, and that's group number one. Group number two is actually a harder one and a more complicated one and a more dangerous one in a lot of ways. And group number two that wants to keep things the way they are is the group that have already invested a decent amount of cash into comics, and either as a facilitator, as an investment banker, as somebody who helped do the round for fundraising. That group is they're aware now that the story, the premise in which they've raised in some cases tens of millions of dollars, has somewhat fallen apart. And their bread and butter, their paradigm is being able to successfully go raise money. And a lot of the people they went to raise money from are going to have questions if this business venture fails. So they've got to prop it up and keep it, get it basically moving to as good a place as they can. Now, if you know anything about investment bankers and people who raise money, what you know is that there's stages. There's growth stage. There's what kind of there's something called exploit stage or cash in stage. This is where you've grown the business and everything is working out the way you want, and now you're just churning the money. And then there's what they call, the euphemism in business school was the land the plane stage. And this is where the party is over, and what you're trying to do is keep the plane from, the plane's going down. Okay, so ideally it lands, on wheels, not in a fiery ball of destruction. So what you're trying to do is, knowing that the end is here, knowing that the party is over, we've got to get all the kids out of the house before the police show up. That's kind of the moment. And that's the moment we're in right now for the investment community of new media, and that includes comics. They know the party's over for a lot of this money coming in, but they're going to be highly motivated for a year to 2 years to continue to at least paint the picture that no. There's still plenty of money here. And this is why manga, YA, Scholastic, everything else is being bundled into comics. It's being bundled into comics because they need the picture to look as big as possible to provide the exit ramp that hopefully several of these companies get sold, or at least the investors can take their money out without too much of a loss, and their reputation is maintained. And that's a dangerous place to be, because it means that the cash coming into comics is now to some extent tainted. The belief is that there's not that we're now hitting a finite amount of cash, so there's a limited amount. It's going to go to companies that have an exit strategy, and that in effect is what you're seeing a little bit with Oni. Oni is saying, we need to move to that next stage in our life. That next stage in our life is a sale. So therefore, we need to trim management. We need to cut resources. We need to get our books looking very, very clean, like a traditional Hollywood incubation company. We need to look better. That's what's going on. Oni issued this statement saying, there's a lot of sensationalist stories going on. This really isn't sensational news. It's just news. And by the way, why Oni is going to protect in that world is, remember, they're still trying to land the plane. The last thing Oni needs is for a bunch of creators to pile on and start talking about how people are going to steal content. I mean, that they are terrified at the creators going onto Twitter saying, make sure you're protecting your original investments because Oni could steal them from you or not pay you. Like that is poison to a concluding deal. So what Oni needs to do is just buy themselves 6 months to land this plane. And as you look around to other comics in the industry or other companies in the industry, that's the game they're playing as well. This is land the plane time. Now, this doesn't mean everything's over for comics. It means we're moving to this next phase that you've heard me talk about. I think you've heard Mark Miller talk about before. It is literally a let's figure out a way to move on to this next phase of comics life, the next phase of the next cycle, the next 20-year period where things are going to be different. And it's an exciting time, but in that time, a lot of some people will make it and some people will not. Some planes will land, some are going to crash, in a very messily into the ground. So anyway, that's what's on my mind. It's an interesting time in comics. I think that the last 2 years have been fascinating as almost a psychological case study, and the next 2 years are going to be a lot of this playing out. The crazy part is, I think for all, and this is where I'll be a little bit of a dick, for all the people who over the last 2 years would say things like, Perch doesn't really know. He talks like he knows something about the comic industry, but he really doesn't. I think we're at the place where all the cards are going to get turned over, and now we're going to see. And based on kind of the last, I don't know, week and a half, I'm very confident in the cards that I've been putting on the table. We'll see. But I think that there's been a decent amount of shade thrown at me by a couple creators / YouTubers, and I think that we'll see how people do with some revisionist history at this point. But I told you so. I'm not gonna. I'll try not to do it, but maybe a little bit. Maybe a little bit. I'm gonna have to. Anyway, thank you all for your support over these crazy years, and thanks for listening.